That would not be included, we would have to pay that back to the, owner. So we would be paying 13,000 more, but in reality, we got it back in taxes.
So it's
And
a
it-
wash.
Yeah.
So it's a wash.
Yes, it's a wash. So, the other thing she said was the commissioners would have to agree to extend the purchase agreement. And, I don't think that they would have a problem with that. Right, Bill? If the commissioners would not have a problem
I don't believe so.
extending the purchase agreement.
I don't think there'd be a problem with commissioners doing that, it's just time.
So I'd still like to make a motion to have a meeting.
Four people at a time.
Okay, did someone do
Yeah.
that?
Then I would second it.
What's the purpose?
Just to go ahead with this, I mean, let's just vote on it the May 6th or whatever, and get it done. I mean, government drags on, and this is a great example of it, I think.
So you made a motion to have a special meeting.
May 6th,
To advertise a May 6th meeting.
yeah. 10 o'clock, is that?
Okay, we got a motion on the floor made by Paul Ryder, seconded by Ethan Brown, to hold and advertise a special meeting May 6th, for approval, of the advertisement. Any further discussion?
You wanna make sure you're gonna have a forum to have that meeting?
I guess if you vote yes, you wanna be there, but I will definitely not be there.
I can't dive it.
You can?
I can.
Where'd you say that? Oh. Okay. And I can be here.
I'll be here.
Okay, well, there's four. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Advertising a special meeting on May 6th at 10 a.m. to discuss purchase agreement.
Yes.
To appropriation for it. Was that conjunction?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us down to additionals. We've got free trial, police equipment, 22,000, juvenile probation, electronic monitoring of 750, and county general or general government services of 1,573,874.
Move to approve the additional.
Second?
We've got a motion and a second on the floor to approve the three additionals. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. And I believe the next item, corner, additional to be advertised, $15,000 for autopsy fees. Kristen, I think you've already addressed this, but if there are any further questions for Kristen,
So moved.
Second.
We just do that by
just by consent, okay. Okay, I wanted to mention one thing. I read in the paper, the meeting Monday, misquoted, on the financial sheet that I handed out to the commissioners, Tracy involvement from the redevelopment commission, not the economic development commission. So that probably caused a little confusion, on some of the EDC folks. And indeed, it was the redevelopment commission. I think, Bill, we spoke of that a couple of times about how the RDC was talking about being involved with the utility lines and maybe going to a 20-inch line, et cetera, et cetera. So that correction, I just wanted to correct that particular record. Also, I think, just for everyone's, and I understand how this all kind of works, with the assessor making comments about, some assessments because of real estate markets going up and inflation going up and things such as that, that some of the assessments, and the folks being assessed on their properties will see an increase. And I think, sometimes folks will say, oh, well, that's wonderful because the county will be getting, a larger portion of property taxes coming in. However, a lot of times when those assessments go up, the tax rate comes down a little bit. And so the end result is kind of the same. We may see a little bit of an increase, but it's not gonna be substantial. That's a- Pardon?
Can you say that again? I'm not understanding your,
The assessment, the property assessment
for what?
for farms, houses.
Everything.
For everything. And as those raise, Beth stated that the tax rates come down.
Sometimes they come down,
Sometimes they come
yes.
down.
Depends on how much it's spent.
There's a
So-
lot of other scenarios that go into that.
Right,
Like our
it's not
budgets.
as simple as that.
Yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to mention that. But other than that, anything else for the good of the council?
I have a couple, I would like to, I hope this comes on the agenda, but I would like to discuss this, or do we need to put it on this agenda, or?
No, let's discuss it.
Yeah, we can talk, I've got copies for those that want.
While he's getting that out, I do have a question. So I hear a bunch about grants. Who is responsible for looking for grants, writing the grants, getting the grants? How does that process work? I hear that we have Curbsy, but they don't go out and look for the grants, right? Is it the department heads that should be looking for their grants, or how does this work?
I don't understand what your question is.
How does the county go about getting grants? Who looks for them, who writes them, who does them? Do the department heads, are they supposed to be looking for grants in all their
We don't have
departments?
a workflow for that.
Normally, the department heads, if they know that they can get a grant for their department, they push that through. You have a CURBSI representative and the commissioners have a CURBSI representative. If they are known that we would like to have a grant, they ask CURBSI if they could help us with that grant. Some they can, some they can't.
But we don't have a designated person that's really pushing and going and looking for grants.
You would if you have a CURBSI, they would go to CURBSI and see, hey,
Who's they?
your representative. I'm actually, it's Josh.
Ours is Josh.
Commissioners is Bill.
So the
But-
department heads look for the grants. They bring it to Josh, our representative, and they go to, if they can't write them, or does
They-
Curbsy always have to write the grants?
The Curbsy has limits on how many grants we can have to them at any given time. But
Cause I'm always hearing that there's so much money out there. But how is our county looking for it? We should be looking for it, we should be getting it. Or at least trying to get
Bill
it.
has the answer.
Bill,
No, Bill doesn't have the answer. It depends on the department. A lot of times the departments write their own. The health department, when my wife was in the health department, she wrote a lot of the grants for down there. And now, because of our health department not being all full, and because of a death in the health department, we're not applying for all those grants that we could be applying for. As far as, I just talked, well, it's been a week ago now, to Kirksey, concerning a grant for, ambulance garage. You know, our original plan was to have, 3 new ambulance garages, and we're short the third one, which is supposed to be south of Delphi. And, there are Okra grants for that will cover 80%, of that. Don't interrupt me, grandson. Anyway, I think you're pointing out a hole that we really have, and that is that there is a lot of money out there that we could be applying for that we don't even know about. And we could have applied for, the ambulance garage Okra grant before now. We are working to try to get it in by this fall's round. I don't know, the idea that came to a lot of the counties was we'll do it through Kirksey. But I think that like Josh said, is it only comes up if you go to them with it, you know, and you propose it to them, then they'll take it and run with it. How you find all that's out there, I don't know. But I'm sure there's a lot that we could be getting.
Because I'm just questioning that, you know, you have a department head that, do they know that they really should be looking for these grants? Have they ever been told, hey, you know, I mean, if you ever see a grant, or, you know, let's search for grants, let's look for these?
Well, I think most of the department heads are aware that there are grants out there, and if they're reading the literature they get from their associations, they're seeing that other counties are getting this grant or that grant to fill these certain gaps that they have, because they're all tuned in with you know, the assessor, the Auditors Association has all the information coming to them. It just depends on if they're reading it all and following all with what's being offered to them. It is offered to them. I can't say 100% of what's out there is offered to them, but what the association puts out would help an awful lot.
And Soil and Water just applied for a grant and got it, and now they're gonna distribute. I mean, I think department heads are, it looks like to me, a big part of this.
Should be, I mean, they know their needs better
So,
than anybody.
I mean, we're not gonna hire somebody special to do it, are we? Does anybody wanna do that? Or I guess commissioners would do that.
I know Mike Fincher brought.
He does a great job of looking
Yeah,
for grants.
the public facilities grant to us for the ambulance garage,
Mhm.
so.
It just might be something every so often that, you know, we, you know, remind department heads that, you know, look for these grants, because
Be a
I
good
just, I
idea.
see in the
Well-
paper all the time, these other counties get these grants, and I just don't hear
Do
about.
you guys receive your emails from the AIC? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's where this last one came. So you guys could, and the commissioners, that's how he found out, well, plus through Mike and Doug both brought it up, and I brought it up. But that's where we see where these grants are, so you guys could initiate a grant too. I mean, it's not just the department heads, you could go to that department head and say, hey Doug, there's a grant out here for the EMS building, we need to go for it.
Is there communication from Kirksey to either one of you guys about
No,
things?
Kirksey does not
So they don't really
solicit
let you know. what's-
opportunities.
Okay.
They facilitate application.
Okay, got it.
So I agree with Beth, I mean, I think it's part of our responsibility of our departments, we should be looking as well as reminding our department heads that, you know, every once in a while, let's look for some grants, because that is
Yes.
free money.
Mr. Studebaker?
I deal a lot with scholarship programs across the state. Same entity, basically. You have to be motivated to make all those forms, and someone that knows how to write them and do that. So it goes back to the department head, all right? Find somebody within your group that is motivated to look for all those, because a lot of them are just sitting there and there's dust on them because they haven't been touched. But if you have someone that really jumps into it, you have a committee that will write them, but they're not the ones looking for you. They're just doing that work because they know how to write it. But you need someone that's willing to dust off things and say, okay, we need money for a coroner, so you look up those kinds of things, and there's money out there. You know, there's refrigeration units that can be used. that would be donated, but you gotta know where to look to find them. I can get kids full ride scholarships all the way through college and vet school or doctor school, but they have to apply. And unless they're willing to do the application, now, I can tell them all, I'll give them all the information, but they have to fill it out. Each department has to fill it out, that's their responsibility. So, it's motivating.
And I think that was my initial question, if all of our department heads do know that this should be a responsibility of theirs, is to look for these grants.
Lee?
I'm gonna refer back to my mayor days. When I was mayor of the city of Delphi, I had a certified grant writer on staff. We were pretty successful in getting grants, and that's their full-time job, and I'm not sure whether people are applying for grants now to be certified or not. At that time, you did have to be. And some of the grants provide administrative funding for the person that's actually applying, and I'm not a proponent of creating another position for the county, don't misunderstand me, but I felt like that our certified grant writer was worth their weight in gold because of all the money that they were able to locate and find. But there again, it still needs, the grant, if you had a certified grant writer on staff, the department heads would still have to bring their needs and their wants to this grant writer so they would have some idea of what to look for and who they were looking for.
How to filter down through everything.
Because FERC is our writer, right?
Yeah, I mean, not all grants, they only do like governmental grants. Like, so if the United Way had a grant, they would not apply for it. It's only federal, state type grants.
Bill, I had a question. When you were talking, you talked about our health department. What is the situation with the sanitarium? I know one of.
Kelly wants to start next week.
Next week.
Second is on there.
Okay, very good. Very
And
good.
this fellow got the background, he's not fully licensed, but he's
Or
part
sanitarium.
of.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we were talking about this, are we still talking about this, or was this just distributed?
He was digging out the information, I said, while he's getting that,
Oh.
I'll ask about grants.
Okay, sorry. We're going down
I
different.
apologize, I was gonna
Yeah.
talk about the health department, I completely forgot that, sorry.
But also, the health department has applied for their grants,
Yes.
that they can, and Dr. Backer has seen those, is what she told me.
I have emailed her a couple times, and she hasn't reached out, so I think she's,
Who's doing good?
Mercy.
are you ready to talk about the jail thing now?
Yes. Monday, the commissioners had a work session, concerning the jail, and at that time, Greg from Elevatus presented to them a new design, that I think is a duplicate copy, Paul, of one that they're working on in Missouri, right?
Correct. County of Missouri about our size.
Within realms.
Yeah.
It's a duplicate copy, and he presented, cost of about 16.8, I believe, 16.8 million. Now, that doesn't include, bringing the bond issuance to market, the underwriting and the bond issue. It doesn't include some of the architects, or not architects, some of the, groundwork, because it's gonna have to be reworked because it's a smaller building. And
Just
he
so we have
met,
the exact numbers, you want me to read them off, or what you gave us?
yeah, that'd be fine.
So it was 16.8 for the million, it was a 3 to 5% for the bond cost. It was 15% internal cost, which is for desks, et cetera. And then there was a total of $459,000 for registration. So those were the numbers that you had given us.
And what Tracy and I provided to the commissioners, kind of broken down in three different areas. Of course, with the lit correctional facility tax that we have already collected, and will continue to collect over the next 2.5 years during potential construction. That's the first amount. That should give us around $4 million. Possible funds, in three different categories: rainy day, ARPA, and the RDC contribution. Right now, I think we're looking at maybe cutting that 1.5 million down to 500,000 for, the utility lines being ran down to 100. And then, the third category, projected possible funding, is 2023 lit, collection, and 2024 lit collection. And then 23 and 24 potential rainy day, funding. So when you add those three up, it's a little over 10 million. Taking into consideration, Baker Tilly, has ran calculations on a $10 million bond issue, puts us a little north of 20 million, that we think can be utilized. Tracy went on, in the bottom part, costs and savings. If we leave 911 currently where it is, potential tower savings and movement savings, some additional expenses, 50% for furniture. However, some of the furniture out of the old jail will be moving out there. So this is what we presented to the commissioners, and I feel fairly comfortable with that. In the Baker Tilly report that they presented to us in January, they had, I think, the amortization principal and interest was around $773,000 annually, and we will have about a 25% cushion on what the annual amortization will be, principal and interest, which, barring anything extremely terrible happening, we can utilize that 25% cushion for operating expenses, for ongoing different things that may take place at the jail. So I feel fairly comfortable in the figures that we provided to the commissioners, and they decided that potentially utilizing a bot procurement system might be the best. No idea who that may be rewarded to. I think they're going to put out some feelers and notification to have some presenters come in with a bot plan. Pardon?
They were going to open it up to bid.
Yes, yes. And, with the bot operation, they can, I don't wanna say circumvent the commissioners, but they can negotiate privately with the contractors, which hopefully will save some dollars in the end.
Say that again.
Hopefully, with the bot, they can negotiate privately with contractors and potentially save some money on construction things.
Well, I took it upon myself to do some numbers, because I just did not want to go to the meeting with commissioners and have no sort of plan, or they have any clue of what money was sitting where. So my question is to the rest of you that seen this, do you have input, do you have changes, or what are your feelings?
I don't disagree with your analysis. The problem is, your numbers are all accurate, and you have two assumptions about 23 and 24 transfers, but this doesn't take into, like, the real world application of how these funds are dispersed. So we have capitalized interest, we we have a number of things that go into that calculation, and that's why all of that draws down your actual amount. So the only thing I would say is, it is possible, but the thought that we're gonna have a 25% buffer might be a stretch.
Well,
Those
these
are numbers
numbers
from
are gonna
Baker Tilly.
be, when we talked to Baker Tilly and that, he said they have to have a starting amount. So we have a starting amount now, they have said we're gonna build this jail.
Right. No,
So now they will go through.
So I'm just saying, when Baker Tilly runs these numbers, it will look different than how you're looking at them.
Yes, because they will give us the information that they gave us back in January, but with the more valid numbers that we have now at the present, because we now have a plan that we're moving forward, and we're not living in,
Right.
if we do
And
this, if we
I
do that.
believe that a copy of that is in mailbox,
The January report.
the January Baker Tilly report.
But, yeah.
So if you don't have a problem with these numbers, and there's no additions, subtractions, whatever, then I would say that we need to forward this to Baker Tilly, and then I also asked them to give a better description than the one that they gave us in January, with all of those costs that you're talking about broke out separately, so we see exactly.
And he said that'd be not a problem to do.
So, I mean, I think that there are mechanisms, there are other alternatives in Baker Tilly for the bond issuance, where we could potentially do better. And significantly better. Because I believe Baker Tilly was, issuing it at like 4.25, I think was the rate that they quoted, and other counties similar in size have received offers like in the 2.25 range.
So you're saying you'd like to give these two numbers to other,
I think that, and so that you know, I'm saying you personally know the difference. I mean, that's a huge, 200 basis points on a loan this size is a lot of jack.
Yeah.
So I think that this body could really improve the opportunity to make this thing cash flow by doing research in that space.
And I know a lot of.
But the commissioners will ultimately have to make that decision. I mean, we can present them with information, but we don't enter into those contracts, so that we would just have to present that to the commission.
so who else do you wanna give this information to?
I'll get you a list of financial,
Underwriters.
yeah.
Yeah, I know Edward Jones used to do it from start to finish, and then, a lot of times they just push those bonds out to the
Right,
brokers.
a little bit more sophisticated, like, not that Baker Tilly doesn't do things in a sophisticated way, but I would say they're more traditional, and, that it doesn't behoove them to go the extra step, because they're Baker Tilly.
That's where the money is.
These other advisors charge?
Yeah, so does Baker Tilly, I mean, whoever issues the bonds is gonna.
Hired Baker too.
I was gonna say, I thought, yeah, that's what I thought, I mean,
Huh? No, Baker Tilly and other firms, in other counties, Baker Tilly, they hire Baker Tilly and someone else. You're basically hiring a broker, because,
so you're gonna hire someone to see who gets the best.
you hire an expert that can drive down the borrowing costs.
I guess I'm gonna have to see what they would charge to do that.
Well, you're talking about millions of dollars of interest that they can save you. So if you pay them $100,000 or $200,000, it's a rounding error for the value that they can bring to you. That's just my opinion. I mean,
Baker Tilly knows all of our finances, and they know all of our, we send them reports all the time. It's that.
I'll show you.
So you'll get us that list and you'll work this out on that. Cause I'm all for finding the cheapest route. Yeah. Well, and depending on how much you gotta spend to get it the cheapest route is, you have to take that into consideration too.
Okay, anything else for the good of the council?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Got a motion and a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We'll walk through
We don't have to call the meeting, we have to show up at the meeting if they're gonna extend it.
That's not why we extended it. I didn't do it.